Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We are doing more card reviews today for the mini set. First up, we got Paladin. This is the first card, Knight of the Dead. 3 mana, 5/5 undead. Battlecry, deal 5 damage to hero, manifest 7, restore 5 to your hero instead. So, I don't actually like this card a lot. It is a lot of stats for the mana, but we've seen in the past, even in this current expansion, similar cards which deal damage to your hero for a bit extra stats on 3 mana don't make the cut. There is a 3 mana 4/5 neutral card that deals 2 to your hero at the end of every turn, which doesn't see any play. Granted, this is a Paladin card and a bit extra stats, so it has that benefit. If you're playing a pure Paladin deck, you can run this as well, whereas the neutral you cannot. But in a vacuum, if it's only looking at the first effect, don't think this makes the cut. We have to take into consideration the second effect as well. If you're a slower Paladin deck, once you get to turn 7 and beyond, you actually kind of spend all your mana on other things almost every turn. 7 mana you have the Colossal, you have Anachronos. 8 mana you have Cariel. 7 mana also you have Flight of the Bronze if you're running dragons as well and filling out your mana with dragons. Maybe you can fill this in on that turn. It'd be a bit okay, but there just really isn't a requirement to fill out the 7+ mana turns with a card like this in Paladin right now. You just have access to all your late game plays that you want to spend your mana on instead. And before turn 7, you can't really play this if you're a slower deck, because the deal 5 to your hero is just going to cause you to die too often. You're not fighting to kill your opponents, so the extra stats aren't going to help you as much as it would an aggressive deck. As for a pure Paladin deck, you could say maybe this will help heal us up after contest stuff. But again, it's like turn 7, you've either already played the contest and now doing your invitations, or it's just too late in the game for this to have an impact, I think. Plus, if you've ordered in the court, you're not going to draw this until very late into the game. So you're not even going to get the heal effect reliably from that. So overall, I think it's not a good card. That's my opinion on it. And Paladin has access to a lot of nicely statted minions right now, and I think there's just better options than this one. Next, the Purator. Oh boy, actually, we'll come back to the Purator. We'll do the Goldwing first. 4 mana, 3/5 mech dragon. Rush, Battlecry if you're holding a mech, gain Wind Fury. So Paladin already has a 4 mana Rush Dragon. There's a 4/4 that gains +1/+1 if you're holding a dragon. So this is kind of similar to that. The condition if you're holding a mech. If we look at Paladin mechs real quick. This one and this one are pretty reasonable to play. You could play this one in a pinch if you really wanted to, but there's really not a whole lot you would want to play. And dipping into the neutrals as Paladin, probably not, especially for mechs. But these two are reasonable, but if you're running 3 mechs in your entire deck, plus I guess the second copy of Goldwing, this doesn't get activated often enough, I imagine, which is definitely a problem. One benefit is with the Purator. You can combine these together. I suppose I can talk about the Purator a bit as well. So the Purator is a 5 mana 4/6 taunt Battlecry. If your deck has no neutral cards, draw a minion of each type. We'll come back to evaluate him later, but basically just know that he's able to draw a lot of minions of each type. So if you've played the Purator and it draws you your Goldwing, it's going to probably draw you a mech as well. So then it is active. How good is it without the effect? 4 mana 3/5 Rush Dragon. It's not fantastic. it's just like a bit below par, and I think the effect's kind of hard to activate. It's a subpar card, I think. There is one upside, is that you can potentially, I had this idea, go for a pure dragon style Paladin, because there are suddenly a lot more dragons you can play. So we obviously have the Bronze Explorers, Fly the Bronze, Time Warden, Daring Drake, Amber Watchers already, and then there's Anachronos. Brasswing's not really playable, but between these and the addition of this new 4-mana one, maybe you could do a sort of pure Paladin dragon build. So I don't want to make it exclusively pure, but I think you can run the Countess, and you can run one neutral dragon, which would be Kaz. Excuse me. So obviously this is not pure, but it's an 8-mana neutral dragon. And if it's the only one you run, when you play Order in the Court, to get towards your Countess, it's going to draw your Kaz before the Countess, so you will no longer have neutrals within your deck. So you can potentially maybe do that. And just fine. And you get the benefits of the Countess, and you get the Kaz, and you probably like play the Carriol, and go for like equality plus city tax sort of thing. And maybe that could work, because the curve of going Time Warden into a 4-mana dragon is pretty nice. And if you have 2 Time Wardens and you have 4 4-mana dragons within your deck, you're going to hit it pretty often. So maybe there's some potential for that sort of deck. And then you got just a lot of bombs in the late game. You got the Countess bomb, and then you've got the Kaz bomb as well. So yeah, kind of interesting. But I think standalone, not great. It seems just a bit worse than the 5/5. Just the effects just harder to achieve, really. Alright, the Puree, let's talk more about him. 5-mana 4/6 taunt. Battlecry, if your deck has no neutral cards, draw a minion of each minion type. So minion type means the racist, basically. Not the racist, the races in Hearthstone. So like dragon, undead, that sort of thing. We can look at, obviously they need to be Paladin cards because the effect requires no neutrals. We can look through some of them here. Ones that see play are this one. This one's not too bad as a mech. These generally not good enough alone, but maybe with the thing, the Pogfish, not generally good enough, but you could maybe include one of these just for the effect. And there's a bunch of others, and like the main good one is the Light Ray. Light Ray is an elemental and a beast. That means if you have 2 copies of these in your deck, and no other elementals or beasts, so I guess no Pogfish, that means that the Purator is going to draw both your Light Rays, which is pretty powerful. So you could, in a pure Paladin deck, if you have Purator on 5, draw Sous Chef, Seaforth Shaver, and both Light Rays for turn 6, and maybe you can play them all because they're all fairly cheap, and these smaller ones discount these ones as well. So you could have a very nice turn 5 into turn 6 sort of play within the pure Paladin deck. One thing I want to say about this card really is that Paladin doesn't have an issue right now getting to high value cards because they have Order in the Court. This is a high value card, but is it necessary? Does it plug a hole for Paladin? Like Order in Court also finds you your Light Rays as well. So like if you've Order in Court and then you draw this later, it's not going to do that much, to be honest. But it's kind of good if you have an Order in Court, you know, to just find that all those other minions. So is it plugging a hole? If you're a very aggressive Paladin, you don't tend to lose because you run out of value. You tend to lose because you get out-tempoed on the board or you get burnt down. And this doesn't really solve those issues too much. It's generally a good card. It's just, I don't know if it's going to be boosting Paladins to new heights, to be honest. Also, potential of this if you're a slower style Paladin. It could be actually kind of good. Maybe a pure control Paladin. We've talked about these cards already. You'd run Lightweight in that deck as well. But there's a few nice cards you can snipe out your deck. This is a good mech if you're not running the C4 Saviors. You can just run one of these. And this is a really good dragon if you're a slower style. You can imagine you play the Purator, on turn 5, and then you could coin Anachronos potentially into Leviathan, and that's like a very nice curve. But it works better for a slower style where running these cards benefits you a bit more. And maybe that slower style needs that extra value to beat other slow decks. One more idea I thought, if this is the only mech you run, you're either going to draw this from the Purator, or you already played this and put the Sunken Mooncatcher onto the bottom, so your Purator is going to find you the double copy of it. So just running one of these covers your mech completely, because you can never draw dead, basically. You either play this and then Purator, or you just don't draw it and then the Purator draws this. Alright, moving on to Warrior. Warrior has Training Session. Discover a taunt minion. If you play it this turn, repeat this. Okay. Well, we better take a look at some taunts for Warrior. They do have a lot of them. They've been slowly pushing Warrior decks with taunts. Not hard pushing them, but just a little bit every expansion or so. And there's actually quite a lot of taunt synergy now. Obviously, we've got to mention Last Stand for taunt synergy. There's some future cards coming up and bulk up. But you can see there's a fair few that you can get. Class-wise, there's nothing cheaper than 3 mana. Just these two. And then there's a bunch of 4s, and then some expensive ones. For the neutrals, there are a few 2 mana ones. Quite a few 2 mana ones actually, and a lot of 3 mana ones. So you can imagine when you play this card, you're likely to get something offered between 2 and 3 mana almost every time. Obviously there are quite a few bigger ones too, but the vast majority are lurking around this mana. Which is good for a card that has repeatable if you've played it, right? One combo that you can do with it is to the front. This card, your minions cost 2 less this turn, but not less than 1. So you play this, and then you play new card, and then all the taunts are going to be discounted, so you can keep chaining them, and then maybe you can do like a big sort of Lady Fireheart-esque turn where you fill up your board with taunts and get kind of a lot of value. Does that win the game? I don't know. Not sure. It's certainly a lot of value, and maybe what it allows you to do is to run to the front without it being such a dead card. If you're not running a massive combo for most of your deck, like what I mean by that is maybe you can run Bran Astalor, which works nicely with to the front. If you go to the front Bran Astalor, you can like chain multiple Astalors on the turn, sort of like what a Druid does. But the problem with this combo is you just have a kind of dead card in your hand the whole game and to the front. But maybe running this 1 mana spell gives some redundancy in how you can use to the front. So some use there. As a standalone though, it doesn't seem that great. It's like fine. It's decently high value card, I suppose, but just taunt minions in general aren't that strong. Next, there's Hook Fist, 3000. The 3 mana 4/3 mech pirate. After your hero attacks, gain 4 armor and draw a card. That is a lot of value in a 3-drop. Hell of a lot. I believe there was a card once upon a time. It might be crazy. That drew your card when you attacked with your hero. But I can't for the life of me remember it, and I don't know how I'm supposed to look it up right now. But if you know, let me know in the comments which one it was. I'm sure there was. Maybe it was a 3-drop, maybe it cost more than 3. But this new card looks pretty strong. Warrior has got some decent weapons. If you're a more aggressive tempo style warrior, the imbued axe, 3 charged on this, kind of works nicely with it. Keeps you alive, gets you value, etc. Of course, control warriors can run Outrider's Axe, which is a bit slow for it. And then there's also Whetstone Hatchet, which is the weapon of choice for pirate warriors, and this new card is a pirate. This works very nicely with it because it's so easy to equip this one and has a lot of charges. And you can play this on curve, or you can go 1 into coin hook fist, for instance, which is potentially pretty nice. Is this enough to bring back Pirate Warrior? Maybe? There's this new card, and there's also the Mistake that we saw last time, which was a 1 mana 1/3 with all types, so and that is including Pirate. So maybe with all this, there's some potential for Pirate Warrior to make a slight resurgence. But as a standalone card, it's just generally quite good. So I expect this to see play in both tempo and slower warrior decks, to be honest. It's just does so many things. Finally, we have Flesh Shaper for warrior. This is 6 mana 3/8 undead. Taunt Battlecry. If you have 5 or more armor, summon a copy of this. So, excluding hand buffs aside, if you do gain the effect, you get a slightly better version of Best in Shell. You get 2 3/8s. And Best in Shell looked insane when it was first announced, and it just wasn't, sadly. And this is going to be much better. This has a kind of a big condition attached to it, and you can't ramp in warrior like you can in druid. So that's like 2 negatives to make this worse. But what about the upsides? Well, warrior has access to some hand buff and armor, taunt synergy cards. The main one being Last Stand. Draw a taunt minion, manifest 7, double its stats. So turn 7, you would draw and double this, so you get 6, 6/16. And if you meet the effect, you get 2 6/16s, which is a lot for almost any deck to deal with, actually. The issue I have mainly is like the condition is quite hard to meet whilst doing those other things. So if it's turn 7 and you Last Stand plus this, you need to already have gained the armor on the previous turn and not have it taken away from you for it to copy this. Otherwise you just got 1 copy, which isn't always going to be that bad because it's 6/16s taunt for 7 mana is not too bad. But yeah, you really want to double it. And I don't think there's too many ways for you to bank armor to the next turn. As a warrior, you can't really guarantee it. So if your opponent's got a board, they're going to just hit your face and get rid of your armor. But if you're against a deck that's not really hitting your face, putting down these two of these big things could be potentially good. But one of the issues I have with like the Last Stand warrior stuff is this number, the 7. It kind of conflicts with some of Warrior's best plays that they have already, namely Rokara and Nelly. And I guess this has been buffed, but it's not insanely good. But you can see there's already 2 plays that you would really want to do on 7, so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to put more plays around turn 7 because they're just going to start butting heads with each other and you won't be able to do them all. So it kind of saddens me to see that this has got a 7 here for the Taunt Synergy. I feel like this needs to be a 6, and then maybe it's going to open up some space, because currently there's just too many cooks around turn 7, you know? Alright, moving on to Mage. Whirl Weaver. 3 mana, 4/3 Elemental Naga. Backcry if you cast a spell last turn, discover an Elemental. Yeah, this is a really... Why is this in the mini set, guys? So if we look at some of the Nagas that they released this year. If you've cast a spell while holding this, discover a spell. Tended to be what it was. If you've played a Naga while holding this, do it again. But this card has an even older mechanic, which is if you've cast a spell last turn, which, if you guys remember, which was something that was used for Marsh Spawn, which was a really old card now, in Shaman, which was basically a 3 mana 3/4 with this text, and it discovered a spell instead of an elemental. So arguably a better pool to discover from as well. And that card was just like only okay. This one is just, I don't know why. It doesn't really look very Naxxramas-y, you know? Is she like surfing on the beach or something? Doesn't feel very Naxy. I'm just confused why this card's a thing. I mean, we could take a look at the elementals real quick. I haven't actually looked. But it's kind of baffling why this is in this mini set. This one's decent, this one's decent. But that's not much else. There's no like specific synergies. All the neutral ones kind of suck. Yeah, this card, very terrible. Not sure why it's a thing. There's a Naga tag as well for potentially Naga Mage, but that's not going to come back because of this card. Alright, we've got Spectral Trainee. This is a 3 mana 1/4 undead. After you cast a spell, do 1 damage to all enemy minions. So kind of like a Wild Pyro, but doesn't hurt your own side of the board. Costs 1 more mana. I don't know if Mage needs this kind of effect. If you look at their spells, they have a fair few cheap ones, but it's not like they want to spam them too much. There's not many decks that run loads of cheap ones. Generally the ones that see play a Flurry, which is obviously great, but if you're freezing the minions, maybe you don't need to AoE as well. This one sees play, but you tend to play it whenever you get it. Some of these other ones, I guess you can get the Arcane Bolts from generating them. So maybe you could actually do a turn where you do play this 3-drop plus a bunch of Arcane Bolts. But for the most part, you're not playing super spell heavy list where you'd want to use this. It is more expensive than a Wild Pyro, being 3 mana, and you can't mana cheat that much as a mage. A small amount, but not loads, so popping off on this to clear your opponent's board is slightly hard. It's got a lot of health, which is nice. So if you slap it down, your opponent really does want to kill it, but it might be difficult for them. Doesn't have much attack though, so yeah, that does suck. I'd say this is like okay. You really have to like change your mage deck to accommodate for this and be a lot more spell heavy, and I'm not sure that's going to lead to a winning line for mage right now, but I'll give it an okay. Finally, we have Tear Reality. 4 mana, add 2 random mage spells from the past to your hand. They cost 2 less. This is a really fun card. I think it's probably bad. I mean, you can get some crazy cards like Puzzle Box of Yogg-Saron and Ice Block, I suppose. Are the two memorable ones from the past. But like Hearthstone's power crept quite a bit from the past, so you're likely to get something that's not costed appropriately for modern Hearthstone. So you're not really getting a 2 less. You're getting maybe like a 1 less on some cards. And there's some just massive duds that you can hit, but it's just more like this is a fun card. 4 mana up front cost to get it is kind of a lot. But I don't know. It's just a fun card. I don't think it's designed to be particularly competitive, but I like it. I like it. Finally, we got some Demon Hunter cards to show you. First up, we got Shambling Chow, kind of like the Zombie Chow. This is a 1-mana 2/3 undead with Rush. Death Rattle, deal 4 damage to your hero. 4 is a lot. Obvious comparison would be Flame Imp in Warlock, which does see play, but it only really sees play because of the Imp synergy from it and generally having an aggressive deck. Demon Hunter does have aggressive deck in Aggro Demon Hunter, which this probably slots into quite nicely. The downside is quite large, and the stat line of 2/3 I believe is worse than a 3/2 for an aggressive deck. And generally right now there is quite a lot of 1/3s being introduced into the format, so this might not be able to cleanly kill anything the turn it's played. It does hit some Undead DK cards. They have a couple of 1/2s, and it does hit Tunnel Trog as well. Sorry, not Trog, Tunnel Trog, Iron Deep Trog, I think it's called. As well, so it's kind of good against decks that play Trogs. It's going to kind of dominate the early boards, but downside, it's very weak to burn styles. So if you're against like a Frost DK, for instance, this card might be unplayable, and it's going to be particularly bad on turns after turn 1, the same way that Zombie Chow was. Like when you drew Zombie Chow on the later turns, you actually couldn't play it a lot of the time. It was really just a turn 1 insane, other turns bad sort of card, and maybe this is going to be similar. This does have Rush, so maybe it's a bit better, but deal 4 damage to your hero is an awful lot. So this is not going to be a generally good card, I would say. I'd say only really in Aggro Demon Hunter would want to run this, where they're being the aggressor for most matchups, so they're not really feeling the downside of taking 4 to the face. And I think it'll be pretty good in that deck. It's just going to give you board control to allow you to snowball a lot easier. Calamity's Grasp, 1-mana 1/2, Death Rattle, add a random outcast card to your hand. I don't like this that much. We've already seen the random outcast cards aren't crazy good. There's a bunch of expensive ones. This does put it in the outcast position, which is nice, I suppose. But there's already a couple of good 1-mana weapons in Demon Hunter already. Have a look here. I'm on a Belgian keyboard, guys, so my typing's not fantastic. This one is very good for Aggro Demon Hunter, which I don't think they want to get rid of. This one also is reasonable if you were running Death Rattles. I suppose this card is fairly similar to this new one, although you don't have to run a Death Rattle to get the value effect, I suppose, of this. A random outcast card to your hand sometimes going to be good, sometimes it's not going to do anything. Sometimes you won't have the mana for it. It's like okay, this card, I suppose. Probably run it in Outcast Demon Hunter, but it's not going to be insane. And finally we have Fell Scale Evoker, 6 mana, 5/7 Demon and Naga. Battlecry, if you cast 3 spells while holding this, summon a different demon from your deck. Big DH support. There's always a lot of that creeping in one at a time, kind of like the Taunt Warrior stuff. I think this card's pretty good if you meet the requirement. If we remember in the past, Carrier of Fell Soul got nerfed. This used to be 6 mana for a 6/6 that transformed into a copy of the demon deck, and that was basically used to cheat out Z-Lag. I was the first person to do that, by the way. But I don't know if many people know that. But yeah, Carrier into Z-Lag was pretty strong for a while in like aggressive Demon Hunter decks. And you can do a similar synergy now with this card, but it has a couple of upsides. The downside is quite obvious, that you do require you to cast 3 spells, whereas Carrier didn't. But the upside is it works a bit better with other demons. So you don't have to only run Z-Lag. Running this suddenly becomes a lot better because you get a 5/7 plus the 8/8, whereas with Carrier it would just transform into this. So you are only getting a 6/6 version of this, which is not great, but suddenly those two things together makes for a good tempo play. So because of that, you don't run into the risk really of you draw your Z-Lag and you're like, for God's sake, now my thing doesn't do anything, because you can run extra demons. And running this one also seems quite relevant, or this one. There's a few good options, and you can put just enough in to pad it out. Oh. Sorry, my webcam froze there. I think it's a generally good card. Like, it is a Naga as well, so you have access to predation synergy, I suppose. And you do need to play quite a lot of spells if you want to have this active, but it's going to be a very strong card on curve when it's active. It's kind of similar to Proving Grounds in how much power it can put out, whereas it doesn't have like the downside that Proving Grounds has, which is that you can only run a certain number of minions within your deck. So I think it's going to be generally quite strong. You just have to pad your early game with quite a lot of spells. You can run Predations and some Nagas, that's fine. You can run Sigil, you can run a bunch of 2-mana ones like Chaos, Fell Barrage, etc. And you should be able to have it active for turn 6 a lot of the time, if you keep it in your mulligan or you draw it early. And I think for a card like this, you probably do want to keep it in your mulligan. I think it's going to be quite good. Also, because it's a demon, you might think, oh, that's got anti-synergy with some of the big demon cards, which it does with some of them. Namely this one. Start your next turn, summon a random demon hand. This one kind of sucked anyway, so you're not going to really miss it, I have to say. But it has good synergy with this one. All Fell breaks loose. Summon every friendly demon that died this game. So between this one and it summons one big demon, you just need one more demon, and then suddenly you've got a nice refill where you get a 5/7 your big demon and something else. So yeah, I'm kind of excited to play some big DH, where it's not super big DH, but you're running just a couple of big demons at the top and then just generic good early game Demon Hunter cards, and I think it might actually be quite good. That's it for today's video. There's going to be more card reveals happening tonight, and I'll have a video out for them tomorrow morning. So thanks for watching. Bye.